Despite having a lot of creepy or unnerving moments, there aren't many Kirby fanworks that fall in the horror category. For example, I wouldn't consider the Kirby Forever webcomic a horror comic just because the dark matter sequence messes with your mind, since the tone is more melancholic than horrifying. And outside of that, there really aren't many scare-inducing elements to begin with. For a Kirby fanwork to fall in that genre, the scare factor should be a major thing, not something added on top of a story that doesn't have a happy ending, or as the characters go through a lot of rough moments. Today we're going to dive into the world of horror Kirby Fanmedia and see if it still holds up. Hold on to your rope stars, cause we are going back to the classics. The internet ghost stories, the creepy copypastas. The only occasions where this is chilling. Creepypastas were everywhere in the 2010s and have been one of the biggest sources of childhood trauma for an entire generation, despite usually not being that good. Well, I've been reading and watching videos about them for the past 9 years, give or take a few months. There are very few stories I would recommend, and even fewer about video games, and the Kirby series is no exception. But that's nothing new. If anything, the punchline is that there are 74 Kirby creepypastas on the web. Sure, some of these are archives of stories Voodoo, Hoodlums, Revenge talked about in one of his top 10s, but still, there's a lot more Kirby horror tales than I expected. The pastas may range from decent but flawed to just... But the one thing I can't say about them is that they're boring. If you have nothing else planned for the day, you should spend an afternoon reading these stories on the Sonic.exe-like wiki. Trust me, you will not regret it. Not after reading the masterpiece that is the Kirby game made by a false god. I'd like to highlight two in particular, not just for being some of the first of their kind, but also because I think they deserve to be remembered. Also, both of them are about Kirby Superstar Ultra. I swear it wasn't intentional. Dancing Kirby is about a gamer buying Kid Icarus Uprising and receiving a free used copy of Kirby Superstar Ultra. He decides to play the latter first, because of how hot the employee acted, as she heard from the previous owner that it was corrupted. He eventually discovers that it's an updated version that includes a new ability, which is showcased later when Kirby dies, like literally becomes a dancing spirit. This is one of the few Kirby creepypastas that gain a sizable audience. It's small even by creepypasta standards, but bear with me. And I think one of the main contributing factors is how diverse it is from the majority of game pastas. The protagonist doesn't find the game that's the focus of the story in a garage sale, instead getting his hands on it because of a pop-up that appeared on his computer one day, stating there was a buy one get one store near his place. The jump scares have taken their day off, the blood that could have been lazily included to show something was up with the way enemies died is replaced with their ghostly souls flying in the sky, and generally many of the cliches are subverted or aren't present. It isn't without its flaws, obviously. For example, the code the protagonist enters at the title screen is the one used in Konami games, for some reason, while the original one to unlock the dancing ability, quote-unquote, is only mentioned. And Bandana D is called with a different name, although it was written back when he appeared in only a few games, so it's understandable. But these are very small in retrospect. My only real issue with it is that it's not that creepy, just weird and a little off-putting. But that's just me. If you're an adult and you find this tale scary, then more power to you. I think it's pretty good, but far from the best this digital world has to offer. But do you know what I would consider some of its best material? Might be cheating with this one since the pasta focuses mostly on the protagonist's life struggles, rather than the game doing spooky things. But it is a major plot point and even the main conflict to an extent, so I think it still counts. With all of that said, God, is this creepypasta great? I already knew it was gonna be good when I saw the name KB Miller, the person/group of people behind the origin of the MettaKnight web series, but this good? I'll try not to spoil the story too much, since you should read it. In a nutshell, it's about a college student being tasked to talk about a topic of her choosing, and is inspired by watching her brother playing Outlast to talk about an experience with a mental hospital. Eventually, she's forced to watch over a girl called Faith, who spends most of her days playing Kirby Superstar Ultra, as she isn't that great at making friends, and one of the villains in that game acts as her best friend, but also the story's antagonist. I don't think I can explain more details without spoiling it. Again, go check it out if you can. It will be an experience you'll never forget. Alternatively, you can listen to Samutari's reading on YouTube from 11 years ago. There are many other readings, but the reason I recommend this one in particular is that the footage made specifically for this tale has been pre-written, but is preserved here, so there's that. Just like with creepypastas, Kirby has a few .exe games on his resume. But while the ghost stories I covered were pretty original, these don't really go beyond the first step. Just grab a character from the franchise you're making a spooky game about, or make an evil version of them if said character, usually the protagonist, is playable, slap blood on their eyes, make them do evil stuff, profit. Any added element that makes them more interesting feels like an afterthought and doesn't reach its potential. With that said, I'll be careful with expressing what I don't like about them, since next time I talked about something I didn't like that others did, I ended up looking like a jerk. So keep in mind that what I'm saying is just my thoughts, and I'm not in any way, shape or form saying or implying that they're objectively bad and you should stop enjoying them. Okay, take Kirby's World for example. It tries to tell a narrative about Kirby supposedly damaging Dreamland despite his good nature, but that's really as far as it goes. You read so many letters about the subjects asking to take action against him that were supposedly written before the events of this game, but they barely tell you why he should. Of course, you can keep events up to interpretation. Horror often benefits from leaving things not explained in great detail, if at all. But in this case, I feel like there isn't enough material that players can latch onto to form a proper story. You have multiple questions and the only answer you get is your run-of-the-mill walking simulator. You're just plopped in a random castle hallway surrounded by dark Kirbys with no rhyme or reason. In Kirby's Dreamland you do have to kill other Kirbys to unlock doors in its final stage, but there are also regular enemies throughout this level and the rest of the campaign, to make it not as awkward as it could be. In Kirby's World, the only company you get is from those puffballs with bloody eyes, which I suppose are connected to a pink protagonist in some way, besides the looks. I have no idea. They could have been replaced with Waddle-Dees or any other enemy and it probably would have been more impactful. And then they decide to play tag, and once they catch you, you join their side. The seeds for a good .exe game are definitely there, but the plant didn't turn out as polished as it could have been. It's not the kind of plot that had to be scrapped, it just needed a couple of more drafts before getting through the coding process. I don't blame you if you forgot this fun game even existed. I did too for the past 7 years, only remembering it vaguely while writing the script for this video. But I'll give it points for at least being less on the nose with its attempts at scaring the player. With the next two, not so much. Dreamland.exe is one of the most by-the-numbers.exe games, and that's counting the original Sonic.exe. It starts all normal with Kirby strolling through green greens, but after he comes to a dead end and realizes he can't progress just by walking to the right, he turns his attention to the last waddle he sees, tries to eat him, and then Pandora's box is opened. Kirby's name is spelled backwards, every other waddle is derived, so is Kindy. He gets owned by all the Scarfies in Kirby's tummy, then you play as Waddle 2 for a few minutes until this happens. It pretty much speaks for itself. If it makes you feel better, I think both are on the same level. They both have strengths and weaknesses. For one, Dreamland.exe has better jump scares overall. The sounds that accompany them are quiet and unnerving, all things considered. And the animation for the first Kirby jump scare does send shivers down my spine every now and then. For the second one, a decent sound effect was selected, but was this much blood necessary? I do like that you collect stars in Waddle 2 stage, and I wish different tasks were included in the game, other than just walking in a certain direction for a certain amount of time. What brings it down for me is that there isn't any replay value. There aren't any alternative paths you can take, or secrets you can discover, that make a playthrough different from your last one. Once it's over, you're done with it. I get most games of that kind were like this at the time, but still. I was gonna talk about Kirby's Adventure.exe too, but really it's more of the same. Everything is normal, then blood appears everywhere, every enemy and major antagonist is disembodied, Dark Kirby reveals he hacked our NES and put the developers' team's lives to jeopardy, Sakurai, Miyamoto, Iwata, Tanabe, Shimomura, Kumazaki, all of them. We get caught by this evil entity, game over. And if you open the game again out of morbid curiosity, your eyes are met with intense flashing lights. This guy really needs to find an actual hobby. I have nothing against those silly fun games, nor am I advocating for judging the people behind them just because they made something I don't like. I just think they should have been thought out a bit more. I'm not saying I expected something on par with a HAL laboratory production, I'm not, but anything that makes them stand out, other than the fact that .exe games featuring Kirby characters, goes a long way to help them be not just remembered, but remembered fondly. It doesn't even have to make sense to the original characterization or world building. They're fun games, do what the official games would never do. But it also means avoiding predictability. Blood and disembodied body parts can be creepy, but when you overuse them as the other 55 other Team Fun games do, it's hard to feel anything about their inclusion. Also the "he will devour your soul" line is too cheesy and comes across as desperate to frighten the player. How about you show me why I should be scared of this malicious version of Kirby, instead of telling me to be scared? Remember the way Dreamland.exe approached the concept of jump scaring the player? Kirby's Adventure.exe wasn't as subtle, unfortunately. I will admit that overall it does try harder than Dreamland.exe. I like the original animations and sprite work, especially Kirby seeing his feet covered in blood, the unique copy ability portraits, and Wispy Woods. His face is pretty chilling, I'll give it that. On the other hand, it's got cheap jump scares, the flashing lights, and the inclusion of the developers behind the franchise. Because I don't know, and it's a shame that I had a lot of negative things to say about it, because the other two .exe games made by Polyboy are pretty good. They're more creative and break the fourth wall in a much more clever manner. It doesn't help that the former came at a time when we would see the first .exe games to have multiple endings, and the latter 1 year after the Sonic PC port, in a period where Sonic.exe and many creepypastas were being revitalized thanks to Friday Night Funkin'. Even if we're just talking about Kirby-related fanworks, the Too Much Kirby ARG had its first videos uploaded a few months later. An ARG that I won't cover in this video, not because I've already talked about fanworks related to Fanpack of Superstar Ultra enough. I've covered it another day. With all that said, I have nothing but respect for those who are working on retakes of them. Seriously, I am nothing but excited to see how they play out, and I wish good luck to them all. But there's still one game I've decided to tackle. Other TXC games so good, I decided to give it its own section, independent of the previous ones. A game that had a lot of competition, yet stayed close to the top of said competition. Flawed, but promising. Similar, but original. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dreamland 2002. If I had to describe Dreamland 2002 in one sentence, it'd be a playable ARG. It's a fun game that disguises itself as an expansion of the original Kirby's Dreamland, with more playable characters, redesigned stages, and updated visuals. If you've clicked on this video, or paid attention to it, you know it's not that simple. I mean, the player selects screen as Kirby, but you can play as him, only as Waddle Dee and eventually DDD. Mario.exe match? It's another game where the pink puff is the villain/antagonist, but what makes it different from the others is its style of horror and how it's executed. You can already see it in the first segment of Green Greens. The hills have cracks on them and no enemies are present, save for a Kirby with no mouth staring at us, eventually starting a fight. What's even more strange is how we don't really defeat him. He just leaves arbitrarily. Just what is up with this guy? Thankfully the game goes back to normal in the next rooms. There are various enemies and apples you grab to defeat them. Even Wispy Wood's fight works as intended. Although obviously, since Waddle Dee doesn't have the ability to inhale, the workaround is that the apples won't roll around. They just fall on the floor and you can pick them up whenever you please. Hit the sapling 6 times before he can beat you, and the game will slowly but surely drop the facade. The background full of life is replaced with a generic black one. The comforting grass disappears. The tree loses its eyes and gets darker and darker, and when it comes back, it becomes this googly-eyed mess. Your poor Waddle Dee can only struggle as he tries and fails to run away, getting wolfed down in a matter of seconds. As if things couldn't get any worse, the third puffball appears again, signifying that you've entered this world. Castle Lololo is virtually unrecognizable from its original counterpart, in every aspect but the terrain. And even then, there's still an asterisk in that department. The lack of enemies and items, those melancholic statues, and the mysterious and harsh music that plays when traversing the stage. I dig the energy and spooky imagery of Dreamland 2002. No longer does it feel like we're stuck in the early to mid 2010s style of scaring the audience by relying on as many shock elements as possible. This game genuinely feels like water-polished iteration of the last 3 fun games I talked about earlier. Could be. It manages to be scary, even for a young adult like me, and it achieves that mostly with the good old analog horror type of storytelling, adding themes of religion, sacrifice, and immortality, but not in a contrived way, nor are they included in a manner that makes them obnoxious. Call them cliché all you want, but when they hit, they really hit. I really love that Waddle Dee is referred to as, or represented as, a little apple. This seems to be a common connection inside Kirby media, official or fan-made, and more often than not it's played off as a joke, because Waddle Dee's bodies do kind of look like apples, and their colors, though not the same, are pretty similar. Also, apple juice is Bandaradi's favorite drink, which helps giving it a purpose behind a coincidental appearance. But here it gives off the idea of how helpless and almost insignificant they are, especially with sentences such as "I am the light, you're everything. You are the dark, you are nothing. Don't look, you can't halt the glowing." Unsettling. But what about King Dedede? He's not a weakling and he's not a softie, or at least not in the same way subjects are. The apple analogy does not work, both from a physical perspective and personality-wise. So what do you do with him? You put him in a room where murder is encouraged and make him question his morality, upset that he has to prematurely end so many people's lives. Just put on your gym playlist, that will calm me down. He fights off against tons of half-alive Waddle Dees and Waddle Doos before an epic showdown with Cracker and eventually the final boss. It even goes back to what this little fun game should be according to its description when you start to play as him. Anyhow, what's that final boss all about? Boo! Spoilers ahead. Watch the piece of me. Yeah, okay, you get it. No, your eyes are not deceiving you. The game pulls a dig-dug.exe and as you fight a possessed Kirby on your desktop. You can see it in the footage, but trust me, the wallpaper was there when I fought him. To think that fourth wall breaks in games of this genre have been pushed so far, from sending you to other pages to printing things on its own, is interesting, even if it's for the wrong reasons at times. But rarely do you get to see something cool like a fight that can happen on your computer, not just in a program you downloaded it on. Dedede's campaign doesn't go as far as it goes with Waddle Dees, and for some reason Cracker's fight felt harder than the one against the main villain, but given that this was a demo for this year's Luigi Kid Creepypasta Challenge, I'm inclined to believe it was simply a matter of time restraints. The only one demo from this year's Luigi Kid Creepypasta Challenge that rivals it, for me, is Never Left Behind, and even then, I think this one is more engaging, and it isn't hard to see why. The horror doesn't make the game feel like it's stuck in 2011, it's a genuine platformer rather than a walking simulator. It manages to make Kirby a credible threat, and one that looks unnerving too, and it just leaves you wanting more out of it, which is far from a complaint. Also, remember when I lamented how the previous EXE games didn't have collectibles that gave you a different ending? Dreamland 2002 has them in the form of those eye things you can collect in both Waddle Dees and Dedede's campaigns. Unfortunately, I can't show you that path, since I didn't find the first one and I can't seem to reset the progress of the demo. The creator of the game, Grey Bastard, awesome name by the way, told in the comment section of its Game Jolt page that there should be a folder on your PC where your save file is present, but I couldn't for the life of me find it, so you'll have to experience it yourself. He has also stated that he's intending on working on a full version soon, so I'd like to address some suggestions that I think could improve the experience, and that includes my problems with the demo, small as they may be. I don't expect him to watch this video, but if he is, hello there. For one, please make it clear where you're supposed to go. For the most part, you can get to point A to point B on your own, but there are certain sections that leave me scratching my head, like how the first room in Castle Lololo feels like an endless hallway. The solution? Walk to the right for a bit, then turn back and you'll find a door to proceed. The game doesn't give you any hint that this is how you're meant to progress. And it isn't something that once you discover, you feel stupid for not understanding earlier. You can't just enter the level and go to the left immediately. You can't just pass by a few statues and go back to the beginning. You have to walk in this room for about half a minute before you can turn around, find the door, and enter it. The only other example I can think of where I was stuck and it wasn't my fault was before the final battle, where you enter this black room with only a tree in the background, and you're supposed to understand that it works as a door. And you have to enter it from a specific angle too. With actual doors, it'd be a lot more understandable. Even those who aren't acquainted with game mechanics and language, they'll eventually find how to open one, but a tree? It's rarely used for anything beyond simple background terrain, of something you can grab onto. I had to look up a let's play of it to get past these screens. And while I don't have a major problem with using a guide if I'm stuck, I'd like to figure it out on my own, you know? I have zero complaints about the blood and gore. I think they're used to great effect, but I don't like the jump scare in Castle Loro that happens before the chase. It's very unnecessary, and I think the game could benefit if it just used a music cue to tell you, hey, hurry up if you don't wanna lose a life. Think of that stage in Sonic.exe Spirits of Hell, where you have to avoid Exceller, and if he notices Tails, the music changes from a calm and eerie one to an intense one. Also keep the swearing to a minimum in scary / really serious scenes. I'm not saying this because I'm a child who thinks saying curse words is terrible or anything. No, it's more because, in the wrong context, it can break tension in a moment where it's needed. I just don't think the F word is necessary in this sentence. Add more playable characters / campaigns. We already have 2, which is fine, but I think we can explore more themes with the baddies from this Game Boy Classic. Maybe we get to play as Waddle Doo or a crazy pig like Scarfy. I think a bubbly clouds stage in the style of a shooter, where you use their ability to explode or bite enemies, would be really cool. Also, why Dreamland 2002? I really wanna know, please and thank you. And I think that's enough spooky macaroni shenanigans talking for the day. Media truly comes for everyone, even in more mature genres. And as much as I may criticize some of those examples, I can't bring myself to hate them completely. So let's celebrate the diversity in Kirby horror Fanmedia, small as it may be, in spite of its flaws. Looks like I managed to go an entire video without including one cheap jump scare, so comfy jump scare of something.